Hello and good afternoon. I think it's afternoon, just about, on the button. Welcome to today's webinar sponsored by SCORE Fairfield County on stabilizing your technology costs. I'm Steve Smith, the webinar coordinator for SCORE and a business mentor at SCORE, and I'll be your host today. We have two presenters, both of whom are ready to go here. One is Bud Lee Frund, and the second speaker is Michael Dolce. Many of you have heard Bud Lee at SCORE workshops in the past. He does a series of them on technology. But more about Bud and Michael in just a minute. First, a little blast on SCORE. Many of you, obviously, you know something about it or you wouldn't be here at the webinar. But just quickly, let me just reiterate that SCORE is affiliated with the Small Business Administration of the U.S. government. It was started back in the mid-'60s. Currently, there are more than 320 offices in the U.S., about 11,000 volunteers, of which I am one. Bud Lee is also one. And our chapter is SCORE Fairfield County. We have over 100 volunteers currently, and the volunteers, probably two-thirds are retired executives, and one-third are people like Bud Lee who are still slogging away at the work world. The volunteers tend to have industry expertise, process expertise like supply chain, for example. And the way that we deliver this expertise to the small business community in Fairfield County is, and this, please, if you don't know this, please write it down, is through scorefairfieldcounty.org. That's our website. It's been newly refurbished within the first quarter of this year. It's really good. It tells you everything about us. It tells you how to get a hold of individual counselors for one-on-one sessions, either in our offices in Norwalk on East Avenue, or we can actually, I've done it myself, sometimes meet at a Starbucks or a diner or something like that to talk over the issues that you're facing in running or starting your small business. The other thing you'll see at the website is a tab on workshops, and they come in two varieties. This is a webinar, obviously, and that you'll see the webinars are also displayed under the workshop tab at scorefairfieldcounty.org. The other kind of workshop that we do is a face-to-face workshop. They're typically in libraries throughout Fairfield County, say Greenwich Library, Westport Library, etc. We do about 135 to 150 per year. They're all listed on the website, and I would encourage you to go there and kind of take a look at the inventory of subjects that we're offering and pick some to go to, and you can register right online. So again, that's a little bit about us. And thank you for your continued interest in SCORE Fairfield County. This webinar will last up till 1 o'clock. It's being recorded, and the recording and the slides will be available at scorefairfieldcounty.org within the next few days. So if you miss something, don't panic. You can get access to it at the website. We've set aside some time for Q&A at the end of Bud Lee and Michael's presentation. So if you have a question, please use the chat window in the lower left side of your screen and type your questions in there, and I'll moderate that when we get to the end of the subject. So first, let's go to the speakers. Bud Lee Frund is he provides tech support for small businesses and individuals and families throughout Fairfield County. And he likes to say he makes computers do what they're supposed to do and stop doing what they shouldn't. Sounds like a very aggressive mission statement. He's a frequent workshop speaker, as I mentioned, and is also a counselor with SCORE. Michael Dolce is an accomplished web technology professional, has more than a dozen years in website and application development and design, and he really helps companies with their strategic planning for IT and to determine the optimal direction for their online business needs, etc. So I'm going to turn it first over to Budley, and then they'll go back and forth, and then I'll be back to talk to you about 10 minutes of one. Okay, Budley, over to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Hi all, and thank you for joining us. We wanted to throw up on the screen here for you a brief outline of what we're going to be talking about. And before I hand over to Mike, who will be talking about websites and web development, this is more of a PSA that I've been asked to do on a regular basis. The state of Connecticut asked SCORE, so SCORE has asked me. The gist of it is that we are all placing an enormous dependence on technology to run our businesses now. And if your technology stops working, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out of business. What it does mean is that you will need to take some time to think about the things that you will want to do in the way of communicating with your customers and vendors and tracking inventory, scheduling, and while it may not be on your laptop or desktop machine, if you have another way of keeping your business running, that's all we wanted to do, is to put that thought in your mind and understand that Sony, the company that wants to sell you that backup computer, when they got hit, they had absolutely no backup plan in place to figure out what to do. So you will be a leg up on a very large corporation. Now, we're all sitting in this same boat right now, and I will not give you the details of this article, which was in the New York Times, but it's a fascinating read, and my daughter would be enormously proud of me for quoting a fashion doyen. But understand that this is a time of enormous confusion, and to go back historically, I want to go back about 70 years ago when this fledgling industry called television turned the golden age of radio basically into a second-class citizen. Today, the internet is turning the world topsy-turvy, and as we're all trying to cope and make sense with it, I want to offer 4 thoughts to you, which will then kick over to Mike and he can start on the websites. First of all, the people with the gray hair and ulcers that qualify them to drive the bus, and it doesn't matter whether they're in business, politics, education, or media, didn't grow up with any of this stuff that they're being asked to make decisions about. Second, the ability to afford the latest gadget, gizmo, or widget has no bearing on the owner's ability to use or understand it. I've had the opportunity to tell a Harvard Medical School graduate that their printer will work better if they put paper in it. Third, neither owners nor leaders will disclose what they don't know until the problem from their digital footprint grows into something like the sexting of Anthony Weiner or the emails of Hillary Clinton. And finally, if you touch technology, whether you love it or hate it, you are committed to a lifetime of learning because it is constantly changing and nobody can know it all. And Mike, take it away.
Well, we have this great opportunity to speak to you guys, and we really appreciate everyone who's kind of come on. And Bud, it's a great introduction, and Steve, thank you for the kind words as well. So to kind of start piggybacking off of what Bud talked about, whether you like it or not, you're in a digital age now. I had the fortunate circumstance of growing up in the 80s and 90s. Going to school from 1997 to 2001, just when we were on the cusp of websites coming into the forefront. So websites and web technologies and everything in that regard kind of fuels my experience and being able to kind of talk to you guys. I actually am in a generation where I know what a rotary phone is, and I know what having an actual landline means versus having just your regular cell phone or your smartphone, whatever the case is. I've actually been able to bridge the gap. So being able to talk to you guys, I can kind of talk to you from that perspective. Your business is essentially running now in a digital world, whether you like it or not, and that's something that Bud has graciously introduced to us, and I'm more than happy to kind of take from there. How does technology help you? Obviously, in your computers, in your day-to-day, it's become much more than just keeping your information and calculating your taxes or compiling your data. It's actually taking your business front and your business face and bringing it out into the world. Your website, and a website is now a fluid term. Back in 1997, a website was barely known. It was a page on the internet, and the internet was for nerds and dweebs. As high-speed internet became something that is, more prevalent. Again, I remember the ee-ah sound of dialing into dial-up internet and then high-speed internet. Our children today don't know what not having high-speed internet, not having a computer at their fingertips is like, but we do. And it's now, a website is more than just a web page. It's actually the face of your business, and it comes in many, many forms. But without getting too complicated, let's start with the basics. What a website is, and for some this might seem elementary, for some it might be something that is just, a mystery as to how things get out there, so I wanted to kind of get that out of the way. You have your domain name, and that is your one factor of a website that no matter what you need a domain name. Your www, which doesn't matter anymore. Everyone says, I need to type in www. No, that isn't actually kind of an archaic term, but your website name basically points to a bunch of computer files that exist somewhere on a large computer, which is known as a server. By typing in that name, you are telling you're telling your computer to go find these files somewhere. They find them on this large computer, and they bring up a web page. So domain names plus server equals World Wide Web. That is your starting point for cost of entry. Cost of entry into being, doing a website and doing it well starts with that. No matter what you do, you need a domain name. No matter what you do, you need web hosting, which is again the giant computer that houses your server files. These are two absolutes, and this is how websites work. So no matter what, you need that. But what actually makes it work for your business are the next two elements that are on this slide. You need your branding. You need an actual website that has a concise message. It needs good graphics. It needs easy to navigate and be able to find what you're looking for. And by you, I mean the consumer, especially if you're a consumer-facing business. It doesn't matter what business you are. I mean, you need someone that's going to be on your site to know where to go to get what they're looking for. The average attention span now is, 9 seconds, I believe, something to that extent. You need people that are coming to find you or your business, and they need to find exactly what they're looking for as easy as possible. It needs to be informative, and we'll get into that in a little bit as to why Google wants you to be informative. And in many capacities, it needs to be entertaining. The drier your content, the weaker the user experience, the greater the chance that they're going to pass up using your service or buying your product or even just learning more about you. The last thing that you need is a developer of some kind to bring this to the forefront. You need some sort of technology wizard behind the curtain, taking a great design, a great logo, a great message, and great content, and actually turning it into a full-fledged website. Now, there's lots of options for how you accomplish item 3 and item 4. Item 1 and 2 are also pretty standard. Item 1, no matter what, you're going to need a domain registrar. If you're spending more than, $15 on a website name, you're getting sold a bill of goods you don't need to do. So that's my first tip of the day. Don't overspend on a domain name. GoDaddies are great for that. Network Solutions are very pricey. Register.coms are very pricey. Go for the cheaper. You're not losing out on anything. Web hosting, that's a totally different circumstance, and we'll kind of circle back to that a little bit later. DIY versus professional. Do it yourself. Now, we talked about the development end of it. We need a developer to bring these awesome graphics that you have and showcase your e-commerce site and bring your awesome products onto the virtual market. However, there are services out there that will allow you to do this yourself, and they are actually great. A Wix is very easy. A Squarespace is very easy. GoDaddy has builders built in, so after you register your domain name, you can go ahead and use their website builders, and they have these templates that you can choose from. E-commerce, Amazon has Amazon stores, and they are also great. In terms of being great, they're great because they're easy to use. What they don't accomplish are two things, and it goes back to the branding. The first thing that they don't necessarily accomplish is making you look professional. That is one of the most important things that are out there. I had a client recently that came to me and said, hey, look, Mike, I love the stuff that you do, but you know, I just wanted to get this done as quickly as possible. Here's what my Wix store looks like. And I looked at him and said, to be honest with you, you look like you're grilling. He was a grill master, first of all, and he was selling hot sauces, and he was selling different recipes, different rubs. And I said, to be honest with you, you look like you're grilling in your backyard. I love your food. I think your food looks professional. I think your website doesn't. Let's actually do something that makes people have the same confidence in your sauces and in your rubs from a visual standpoint that they will have once they taste it. Getting the food from the computer into their mouth is the step that a professional website will give you versus a do-it-yourself. The other item that's of importance, the do-it-yourself is very, very important if you need to get something up fast, but at the end of the day, once you start growing and you need to do things that these do-it-yourself sites can't do, or start managing reporting, or start managing how do I save money with credit card processing, how do I do all these things, and you go, boy, you know, I need a new website, I need a real website. At that point, they own your website. There's no transferring your stuff out of Wix into your own web hosting circumstance with your own developer and your own graphic designer and your own team. You're basically married to these guys until the time that you decide that you don't want to be. And the downside to that, of course, is you're then starting from scratch again. A developer or a designer like myself can take what you've done and reinvent it, but one way or the other, you are starting over again. So those are the upsides and the downsides to DIY versus having professionals work on it. Search engine optimization, SEO, is a term that everyone hears about and everyone wants to know. How do I get my business found? Currently, if you type into Google, how many websites are there, you will have 553 million results come back, and the top graphic that will come up is the one I have plucked for this particular slide. There are 1 billion websites out there. That doesn't mean there are 1 billion competitors to your exact business, but it does give you a grand scope to know how much stuff is actually out there on the World Wide Web and what you're actually competing against. Your website is continually a work in progress. It is something you will continually need to work on to compete with the 1 billion other websites that are out there in order to get found. I have a great graphic which at some point, maybe down the line at a different webinar, we'll share, where it actually shows you behind the curtain. But for this particular presentation, I thought I would give it to you bluntly in terms of what Google wants to see. Google wants to know that you're an authority on what you are professing that you either sell or inform people about. So that if someone is typing in a New York flooring company, they want to know that you, A, work out of New York, they, B, that you do flooring, and C, that you are the best in the business at what you do. Now, how do you compete against people that do flooring in New York City? Well, one of the ways you do it is through your behind-the-scenes, what they call metadata, which is stuff that people actually have heard. It's a term people have heard before and people know, but it's a term that often goes overlooked when people do it themselves. I mean, it's something that they don't know, they don't understand, that there's some actual back-end coding that you can do to kind of raise your awareness to Google, or you know, basically give Google an awareness that says, hey, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about. Here are the pages and here is the metadata to prove that I know what I'm talking about. And that actually segues into the next thing, content. Content is king on the web now. If this was 1997 when I first started getting into websites, you could basically just dose your metadata with a whole bunch of keywords and a whole bunch of information. And the search engines would look for exactly that and say, this guy knows what he's talking about because there are 8,000 references in his code that the end user can't see that say he is a New York City flooring expert. Now Google will actually fine you and or get you off their search engine, which is the equivalent of fining you, because if your website can't be found on Google, your website can't be found. They are actually sending out letters of cease and desist for people that do this kind of tactic. It's an old school practice. Instead, what you want to do is you want to have the right amount of content in your metadata and the right amount of content that the end user actually sees. Keyword enriched content. They also want to know that you're still in business. They don't want you just to put content up there 5 years and let 5 years go from now between the time you put it up to now. They actually want to know you're still in business. They want you using refreshed content. That's why blog posts become so important now, and you'll hear this term a lot. People want blog posts and blog content. Why? Because if your content has not been updated in 4 years, there's two effects that will happen. There's the end user will actually look at you and go, are you still in business? The back-end search engine, the robots that are crawling your website will also sit there and say, how can this person be an authority on New York City flooring if he hasn't done anything on his website in 4 years? Are they still in business? I don't know. Google will actually look at this. So they want up-to-date content. They want refreshed content. Google wants mobile responsive content. We'll get to a slide in a second that talks about mobile and how important it is these days. It's important not just from an end user experience, which I will talk about in a minute, but it's also important from a Google end. Google has now had a new algorithm that says that the majority of people are looking, over 50% of the people are actually shopping on their phone these days. So if a company does not have a mobile responsive website, and it's not just that it's readable, there is an actual formula that they follow, that Google follows to say that you are actually mobile responsive or not. They will actually downgrade your normal search engine results, meaning that if someone types in New York City Flooring Company, they will sit there and say, because your mobile site is not as great as your desktop site, you're not as quite an authority on this subject as we'd like you to be, because half the users who are trying to find you can't find you easily, and they will bump you down in their rankings. Finally, Google+. Google loves it when you use their products to enhance your search engine visibility. They also love it when you're ranked on other great, highly reputable social media companies like Facebook and Twitter. The more active you are on social media, the more you're tying it back to your blog post, the more you're creating new and fresh content, the better you are in the eyes of Google. If you can get great press from someone like the New York Times, just to reference something that we had in our initial presentation, New York Times will link back to your website and you will link back to theirs. Google will say, holy cow, you have the New York Times linking to you. You're an authority on New York City flooring because New York Times wrote an article about you, and you have the proof of this because New York Times is now linking back to your site and you're linking to theirs. You guys are buddies. I should rank you higher than just Joe Schmo Flooring Company who doesn't have quite the reputation online. Wrapping up the overview, are you mobile friendly? As of October 2014, 64% of Americans and adults own a smartphone. As of January 2014, 90% of American adults own a cell phone, period. 32% own an e-reader or tablet, e-reader in general, or 42% own a tablet computer such as an iPad. This was 2 years ago. The leaps and bounds that we're making in the technology world can only assume that these numbers are even greater than they are today. And just by the fact that your children or yourself are glued to your cell phone, I know myself, I am. My wife gets very upset with me, but at the same time, I live and die. My business breathes on my cell phone just as much as it does my desktop and laptop. So love it or hate it, you are now tied to your technology. I will hand it back to Bud on that note.
And I don't know anybody that doesn't have a love-hate relationship with their technology. When the stuff is working, we're making money, we're communicating, we're productive, everything is going really, really well. And when it breaks, and I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but machines do break. And even if you are MacGyver and you've got that paper clip and the chewing gum, something is going to break, and at that point, you can either invest the time in repairing it yourself, however long it may take, or you can get somebody else to do it for you. If your choice is to do it yourself, well, here are some of the things that will help you to stabilize your costs. First off, plan to replace your technology in a 3 to 5 year window. 3 years if you are pounding on it mercilessly day in and day out. 5 years if your usage is casual. If you follow that timetable, you will get to experience the irritation of making the new machine work just like the old machine. However, you will also, in all probability, get to avoid the anxiety of disaster recovery, and we'll have a little bit more about that in a while. Another way to stabilize costs is to lease your computers. However, bear in mind that leasing is going to increase your cost. I priced out for someone a laptop at Apple, and an Apple lease on a laptop will increase the price on a 3-year lease approximately $300, $100 a year. However, if your cash flow does not allow for the actual purchase, leasing is one option. Go to the bank, fill out the forms, get a bank loan, and instead of writing your check to Apple every month, write the check to the bank. Another option is to extend the warranty on the machinery that you buy, because the extended warranty for something like Dell or Hewlett-Packard will allow you at that 2-3 year mark to pick up the phone, call Dell and say it's not working, and depending upon the service that you have purchased, they were either going to show up at your door same day or next day. With software, we are now evolving into a lease or ownership environment, and depending on your point of view, you either want to own the software, in which case what lives on your computer is yours, or if you lease the software and you don't write your check, you're not going to be able to get your work done. Now, Office 365, depending upon where you go, you can lease Microsoft Office for $7 per user, or you can purchase Microsoft Office 2016, the professional version, for $380. Adobe, you can go on Amazon or eBay and find older versions of Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere, or with Adobe Creative Cloud, you can now lease it, and basically Adobe or Microsoft will become your landlord. QuickBooks Online, for my small business, it works absolutely fabulous. There are other people I know who want QuickBooks to live on their computer, and they want nothing to do with an online service. However, just the other day, the New York Times had an article about Intuit and their online service, and it is booming. Mozy and Carbonite, those are backup solutions, which again, you're paying rent on an annual basis, and depending upon the quantity of space that you need, will be the dollar amount that you're going to have to pay. Finally, your antivirus software, which we will get to it in a little more detail, but I am not an advocate in the world of small business for the purchase of antivirus software, and I will show you in just a little bit. McAfee will charge you, Symantec will charge you. Bitdefender was written up last year at the Consumer Electronics Show twice in 1 week. Their products are really fabulous, and as long as the use is personal, I'm going to say that again, if the use is personal, Bitdefender is a free piece of software. The website is bitdefender.com. And that's on the PC side, by the way. When it comes to cell service, a way to control your costs is to buy a used phone. You don't necessarily need the current model. You can get last year's model. I bought last year's model of an Android product, and the added benefit is that the case that should have cost $40 cost me $10 because it's not the newest, latest, and greatest. Now, this Verizon plan was something that I got involved with, family trip. My kids are hoovering data in the back seat like nobody's business. I know I'm going to go over. All I wanted to know was, if I go over on my data plan, what's it going to cost? Bottom left corner, $15 per gigabyte for overage. However, Verizon was telling me that I should consider buying a new plan. Now, you can look at these numbers with me. My current plan is 10 gigabytes for $80, but Verizon wants me to change it to more everything, and I can get 8 gigabytes for $85, or I can give them $100 for 10 gigabytes, but I already give them $80 for 10 gigabytes. So my recommendation is you might want to stick with the data plan that you currently have, because they have gotten so confusing, even Verizon can't figure out how to explain it to their customers. Now, when it comes to hardware, every business is unique and every business's needs are going to be different. So part of what you get when you have somebody come in and help you is the ability to ask the questions to come up with the strategies that will help your business to run more efficiently. Do you need 2 monitors? If you're a mobile business, 2 monitors is going to be painful in a car. So every business is different. And because of those differences, these are just a bunch of thoughts. And in each case, it's important to realize that if your business is going to grow, how far do you plan to grow it? Should you be looking to a 2-year window, a 5-year window? What's the life of machinery, which, as I mentioned earlier, 3 to 5 years? However, if your business is changing in a different time frame, you may need to think about it differently. By the way, EMR, electronic medical records, which need to be retrievable, but because of the laws of HIPAA, they need to be on secure storage. So again, there are a number of different components to address. Last item before I forget, if you are mobile and you invest in a Bluetooth keyboard, you can sit in the parking lot at Stamford City Hall and type a letter that nobody would know whether you were sitting at your desk or sitting in your car. I've made it work. They're absolutely fabulous. If you're going to go into maintenance, I will tell you, if you're going to do it yourself, nothing anymore. Nothing is set and forget. You cannot just turn on the machine and walk away. You've got to do patches and updates. If you get a tablet, specifically an iPad 2, and you go up to the current version, which is OS 9.3, check the newspaper a few weeks ago, people's machines just basically dropped dead. Apple had a major problem in their software updates. So these are things that you need to keep in mind if you're going to do it yourself. With phones, they got us into a mindset of new every 2 years, and it does seem to work. Changes seem to be not as frequent, so you may be able to squeeze 3 years out of a phone if you like what you got. How often are you doing your virus and malware scans? Because this stuff shows up on computers regularly, constantly, and it is something that one click and you've got a problem. I am a very big advocate of this 3211 backup, which goes as follows. Put your data in 3 different places, 2 different media, one of them off-site, one of them offline. I'll walk you through it. 3 different places: the computer, the external hard drive, and an online storage service like Google Docs or OneDrive or Dropbox. 2 different media: an external hard drive and a thumb drive, or an online service. One of them off-site, that would be your Dropbox, your Google Docs, your Microsoft OneDrive, and one of them offline, which is the do the backup and unplug the hard drive so it is sitting away from everything. If Sony had an offline backup when every machine in their company got wiped, all they would have had to do was plug in the offline machine and everything would have come back to life. Hardware, how often are you blowing out the dust bunnies in there? I work with a professional organizer and his dust bunnies are in height order. I've never seen anything like it before, but we clean the machines regularly and he does a really good job of keeping his stuff alive. Education, I cannot stress enough to you these days how important education has become for keeping your computers alive. And the best examples that I can show you coming up right here, Snapchat lost data for 700 people because somebody got fooled on an email scam. Now, personally, I don't think that Snapchat should be apologizing just for the loss of data for 700 people. they turned down an offer from Facebook to be bought out for $3 billion, and I would be apologizing to my employees for that, far more than just the 700 people whose stuff got swiped online. You can read about this data and the cybersecurity education needs. They're in virtually every publication you touch these days. And on this IBM report, which is now 2 years old, they were looking at 1,200 hacks, and their determination was that 95% of them had some component of human error. This is a staggering amount of stuff where we've got lots of people who are touching this stuff and really could use a bunch of education in making it work better. Plenty of computers out there. Now we got to learn how to make them work. Let's talk about email for a minute, because email is something that many businesses live by. And each of those people runs a company that offers free email. Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, and Apple. And then, of course, there's your business, and you're welcome to take advantage of their services at no cost. Let me paint you a picture. It's 4:53 on Friday afternoon, and the email has to go out, and it's not working. Here's a question for you. Do you feel that you have the same resources available to you to solve that problem as those 4 people? And if you don't, I strongly urge you to look into Microsoft Hosted Exchange. Viruses. That was the New York Times Happy New Year 2013. Basically, the article said, if you are spending money on antivirus for a PC computer, you will get a more visceral experience if you set the money on fire and watch it burn. You cannot do the repair work by purchasing virus software because antivirus is reactive. It is not proactive. In other words, a cootie gets on your computer and the antivirus company comes up with a cootie killer. Then the even better cootie gets onto your computer, and now the antivirus company has the even better cootie killer. There are 80,000 doors into and out of a computer. There is no way that you can protect each and every single one of them. And to invest in it financially, I will pass on to you the words that my brother says to my children every year at Thanksgiving. They have been following it, and he basically says to them, don't do anything stupid. So before you invest in antivirus as a small business, I'm not sure you're going to be getting the return on investment that you think you should be receiving. As for the Internet of almost everything, the articles are clearly stating that there is an enormous push by large companies to start getting more gizmos, gadgets, and devices plugged into your computers and to your home network so that your refrigerator can tell you to go out and get a quart of milk because you're running low because the scale in your fridge said that it should be at 2 pounds and you're at 1 pound, 0.4 ounces. All I can tell you is that the articles that I'm reading are indicating that as you add more items to your network, there are more places to poke holes into it. Now, if you run a business or you've got a home network and you want to have a router trying to do some management of the people on your networks, it's called parental controls. And the parental controls of a router will do a fabulous job of blocking the browser on a computer from getting access to a website. In English, if you're sitting at your PC and you don't want Facebook to be available to your employees, you can block Facebook in your router, and at the computer, they will not be able to get to it. However, if your employees are hooking up to the Wi-Fi in your office on their mobile devices, the mobile devices do an end around from the parental controls, and from their mobile devices, they can still get to any website that you block from the computer. There are now other ways that you can go about resolving that problem. So, That's what's faced both in hardware and software. And of course, now comes that overwhelming question of, with all of these things that I either need to do or want to do, how do you pay for it?
And in that regard, I mean, every business is very unique. Again, we appreciate your time in listening to us. There's definitely DIY ways you can do it, and there's professional ways to do it. But in myself, there's definitely multiple options that we can present and provide. I'll be more than happy to speak to anyone who would like further information about this. And we will absolutely give you a consultation at no cost. So once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we're going to be opening it up for questions and Q&A at this point.
Okay, Michael, thank you. This is Steve Smith again. And we do have a question. Dan Gonzalez asked it about 12:05, so he's been very patient in waiting for the answer. And,
very patient.
Yeah, and so it has to do, let me just read it to everybody. Can you answer questions about supported web hosting and non-supported web hosting? Specifically, we can purchase or rent a VPS where the hosting service provides all the maintenance, or you can purchase/rent a bare bones VPS where you or your programmer provides the maintenance. What are your thoughts?
So there's a couple things on that. One, a VPS is a great tool for having more control over your website. So that's one thing. And for any of the non-initiated, we talked briefly about web hosting. You have to host your files somewhere. There's shared hosting, which is what GoDaddy does and Network Solutions do, and they put you on a block full of other servers. A VPS is a step above that. It's a virtual private server. And what it does is it allows you to actually go into the box and do a lot of things, execute some programs. It gives you more control over that. If the hosting company is saying, one way or the other, you're actually still on a block. You're in a server farm full of virtual servers. So don't think that you're completely out of the woods with a virtual private server, but you're definitely better than if you're on a shared server. I would say that there are companies like Amazon who will allow you to kind of do everything you'd like to do. It's like the Azure hosting and the Amazon cloud hosting. I think that what's better? I mean, honestly, it's how much knowledge do you have. If you have a bare bones virtual private server and you have a great programmer and you have a great server guy that can actually go in and execute different protocols, then you want to save money. You're basically paying somebody to do all the maintenance and the upkeep on your server. So at the end of the day, it's not if one is better or one is not better. It's whether or not you want to do a virtual private server or even go up ahead and have a bare bones server that you completely manage. Because one way or the other, a virtual private server, while is a step above a shared hosting solution, is not like owning a server and having it in your basement. So I hope that answers, kind of the question. I mean, I guess it doesn't. It's one of those, what's better? Honestly, you're either having somebody do it themselves locally and maintain it for you, but one way or the other, you can't see what's behind the curtain. You don't know what the infrastructure that you're married to is doing behind the scenes. They might not do the maintenance on your particular virtual private server, but you've got to make sure that they're doing some maintenance to their infrastructure in general to make sure that it doesn't affect what you're doing. So I hope that answers the question. And if Dan would like to ask a follow-up, I'd be more than happy to
Yeah. Well, okay. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Michael. While Dan's thinking, and others also, again, enter your questions down in the chat box there. Dan also added there and kind of tied this back into what Budley was saying about value for your IT and what to pay for and what not to pay for. He said, of course, there's a price difference for the VPS if maintenance is included. So any comments from either one of you about whether a VPS with maintenance is worth the investment or not?
Well, the first question I'd have is, what are they actually doing for maintenance, though? Find out what that specifically means. I mean, if they're upgrading the OS for you, having them do it is probably not the worst thing in the world. Again, it all depends on your own base knowledge. Most, again, just I don't know, that term maintenance can be a lot of different things. Like I use that term when I do website contracts with people. But I spell it out. This is what you're getting for the maintenance. I'm going to update your software once a month. I'm going to provide a break fix option for you, and I'm going to back up your website. That's what my term maintenance means. Now, from a server end of things, obviously, maintenance is essentially a whole different ballgame. If they're actually maintaining your own site, that probably means they're probably installing updated PHP files. If it's a Linux box, if it's a Windows box, they're upgrading the software for you. I would personally, again, it just all depends on your own technical knowledge or whoever you have in-house. If the person in-house says they can do it, great. If they're going to need help and you're paying them $60,000 a year to focus on this, I'd say the maintenance charge is probably not that much more, and I would just go with it. That would be my own personal recommendation from that end. What do you think?
All right, Michael.
I am becoming more and more an advocate of not having a server in your shop. There are companies that firmly believe that they would like their data to be retained in their four walls. There is nothing wrong with it. There's many things that are right about it. However, your costs can start to be planned out and stabilized if you as a company invest in storage space on somebody else's computer. In other words, if you go to an Amazon Web Services or you start to put your data and your files on a Dropbox, these are companies whose theoretically sole job is to keep other people's stuff running. And rather than your people focusing on making sure that it's working, let somebody write a check. Let somebody else make sure that it works.
Yeah, I have a fellow IT professional too who he got into the AWS for his hosting needs, but the time it took him to get that thing up and running. In the long term, yes, it's going to end up saving him money. So in your case, Dan, it might end up saving you money to do it all in-house. But the question is, the amount of time it took him was about 6 to 12 months, and he ended up having to move clients that wanted websites immediately onto their own shared hosting package while he set up his AWS. And what ended up happening, that's Amazon Web Service for anybody. And again, then he ended up creating more work for himself because then he had to pick a weekend and move all those guys that he had put on the shared service onto his own AWS and make sure they all worked after all was said and done too. So in the long term, he saved money because I think instead of being charged, $50 a month for a virtual private server with maintenance, he was being charged pennies for his AWS, but the amount of time that he spent trying to get that working was time he could have been out there making more money. So to me, I would almost kind of agree with Bud. Find out what your maintenance, what they're actually doing for maintenance. Find out if is it going to be more cost prohibitive for you to do it yourself versus the time it's going to take you to actually do it, and then make the decision based on that. Because you might be saving, yeah, that's great. I saved $20 a month. That's $240. But I'm investing 2 weeks worth of manpower from my server/IT guy to figure out how to make this work. That's 2 weeks that he could have been actually attacking a problem within your company that is costing you thousands of dollars. So that's where it all comes down to. You weigh the time that it's going to take versus the money you're saving.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I think we've done a good job on Dan's question. In fact, he's indicated to us that he really needs to go find out what's in that maintenance. Good point, Mike. We also have a question from Douglas Olson, and it goes like this. How about issues where the domain lives and where the site is hosted? Not exactly sure personally what that means. Maybe, Mike, you can, or Douglas, you can unravel that.
That actually kind of goes back to that original slide of what a website is, and that's why I always include it in there, even for people who have been doing websites for years. It's always nice to be reminded that. So a domain, I would always keep them separate personally. The reason being, so recently I had a client where register.com actually went down, and if their site was also hosted through their services, then they'd have to wait for both of them to come back up again. At the end of the day, when your domain registrar goes down, unfortunately, there's really not much else you can do. Once your domain registrar goes down, your site goes down. And that very rarely happens, but it has happened. Like I said, it happened to Register.com. They went down for, 4 hours or so. I actually host my own sites as well, so I had clients asking me what's going on with my website. Why is my website down? And I said, to be honest with you, the server's running just fine. Here, I'll even show you. And I used a website domain name, and I attached it to their website, and it was something.mbdstudios.com. It's what's called a subdomain. I attached a subdomain to their website and said, here's your website, and it's running off of my server. My server, there's nothing wrong with it. Turned out Register.com was the issue. So it's good to separate the two in that sense that if Register.com now Register.com doesn't necessarily host sites, so maybe it's a poor example, but a Network Solutions does both. You can register your domain name with them, and you can host there. If their systems go down, which they always go down, GoDaddy is another system that always goes down, whether you know it's happening or not. Another example is I was with a client, and she said, "No, I love GoDaddy. It's great. My site has never had a problem. It's never been down." And we were working on the back end of her website to try to help improve the speed and the optimization of it. And we couldn't get on for 45 minutes. And I said, well, here you go. Whether you knew it or not, your site was down. So, again, those kind of things, I like to keep them separate for that exact reason, especially if you keep the hosting separate from the domain. You have options to get back up and running quicker. You're relying on one company to fix two problems at that point.
I'm going to add in one other item on this separation of services. Following in Mike's suggestion, a domain that I have lives at GoDaddy. My email lives somewhere else. Mm-hmm. My email was getting spoofed, and I know I'm not sending myself these zip files and all of these attachments, but I didn't want to have them coming in for even the remote possibility of clicking on something that would blow up my email and my Outlook and corrupt all of my files. So in speaking with my email provider, their suggestion was to put a line of code at my domain registrar. Now, the only part that becomes important at the end user's place is knowing who has what and what are your passwords and credentials to access each of these places. In other words, if GoDaddy has your domain name, you need to have the username and password for GoDaddy. You also need to know that that's where the domain lives. If your email is at Intermedia, now you need a username and password at Intermedia to be able to access that. If your website is hosted somewhere else, again, you need another username and password to access that. So with all of this bookkeeping, I strongly recommend that you get a sheet of paper and you write it down and you put it someplace really safe and really accessible, because these are pieces of information that in the heat of battle, all of a sudden work's got to get done and nobody knows nothing, and right now I'm trying to set up email for somebody who doesn't remember his password. Well, he's working off another machine. He's got to get reports out the door. We can't get the new laptop set up until we can shut down the old one and reset the password. And knew what his password was, type it in, life goes on. So write these things down. They are enormously important pieces of information that are very easy to forget, because once you type it in and click remember that piece of information, you never have to type it again, and you'll need to reference back to a sheet of paper.
It's a great point, too, and just real quick to kind of address that same question again, too. Always keep your email separate from your web hosting. So there's that third component. Maybe that's what they were asking about when it comes to domains and web hosting. Web hosting companies will offer you really super cheap email. And they'll say, hey, it comes with your web hosting package. You sign on, you get your own email addresses at your own website. So it's, Mike@mikeswebsite.com. And that's really great, except when your site goes down, your email also goes down. And that kind of touches upon the issues there. So it's always great, like Bud said, to keep your email separate from your web hosting because you don't want to be on the hook for both. When one goes down, you want to still be able to access your email and still be going forward. So I'll be more than happy to talk to people about that in detail.
Okay.
Right now speaking is Bud Freund. I'm Bud Freund.
Mike Dolce.
Mike
And I'm
Dolce
Steve
was
Smith.
speaking on websites. Bud Freund was speaking on computers.
Hey, we've got two more questions, and we're also at 12:54 and a half here. So I want to first from Yvonne Buff. She's saying, not knowing anything about websites, for cost effectiveness, I wanted to build my own website, but I have no idea about updating or SEO. So should I spend the money to have my website built and maintained to keep up with the behind the curtain, that's in quotes, items? And I have one more question from Sheila I'm going to try to get to too, Budley, so just take
Well, that's actually, we already answered it. She just wanted to know who was talking.
Oh, really? Oh, well, where was I? I must have been asleep. I wasn't. But okay, Sheila. So that's what Sheila just asked, and you answered that. I saw. But how about the question above from Yvonne?
Okay. So the cost of actually just had a client that I'm working with who used a website that came with his accounting software. So he got to build his own website through an accounting software. So when you typed in hisbusiness.com, it actually redirected to accountingsoftware.com/his website. When he asked me to come in and talk to him about search engine optimization, I told him the first thing we have to do is get you a real website. There are websites out there that will do things like that. You can have a blog on WordPress.com, so it can be yourwebsite.wordpress.com. You can also do stuff on Wix.com and Squarespace. But at the end of the day, I would actually recommend that if you're really serious about doing search engine optimization, that you go ahead and just bite the bullet. There are do-it-yourself websites out there that allow you to still do the behind the scenes, but the key of the behind the scenes, though, is allowing web professionals to do what they do best in terms of getting you optimized and getting your business found. So you want to give them the best tools to work with. So having it professionally developed and designed, I got to be honest, and I know I might be biased because I'm a web developer, but there are many times where I sit there and say, great, if you'd have just spent the X amount of dollars to get your website professionally developed and designed, then for me to optimize it and get it found on the web would not cost you as much as it's going to cost you right now. So again, it's the upfront cost versus the long-term cost. Sometimes just biting the bullet and having a nicely professionally designed website using the current content management systems that are out there will actually make it less expensive to get it optimized, which will equal more business, which will actually make you more money in the long term.
I'm going to add one other item to that for Yvonne, which is first considerations as you start to think about this website is, what is your business? What do you want the website to do? And what do you want the website to do for your business? If you're opening an online store, obviously the website is going to be the place of business. If you are a consulting firm, then the website is going to be more of a brochure, and rather than the SEO being an important aspect, don't misunderstand, it will be important. However, as a consultant, your blogging is the aspect of your website that is going to keep it fresh, alive, and new. And then the other aspect, of course, with a website is, how do you get people to your website? Because just because it's in the search engine optimization has been done doesn't necessarily mean that people will find it, number one. Number two, if you have a local business that is catering to a clientele in Fairfield County, do you really want somebody from Chicago or Kansas City giving you a call and asking you to do work? It may not be financially viable. So there are numerous pieces to, I've got to have a website, that I would recommend thinking about before the putting up of the website.
Mhm. All right, good. That's good advice, Budley. Okay, we have time for one more question. We actually don't, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's a follow-up question from Sheila. It's what's the best cheap way to have my own company email? And her example is Sheila@caseycreative.com. And she believes it's necessary in order to have a company page on LinkedIn. A quick comment on that, a minute or two, guys?
Microsoft Hosted Exchange, and I would probably go looking to Microsoft Office 365. And
GoDaddy actually is partners with Microsoft Office 365 too. So if you wanted something cheap and fast because you're not really looking to do anything with it, you could start with that. That's what I would say, like the Office 365, like you said, right?
I'd agree. If expense is an issue, then Office 365 is an absolutely fabulous offer. If the reliability and consistency and support and help are important aspects, take a deep breath and invest in Intermedia, because their Microsoft Hosted Exchange, A, is fabulous, and B, their technical support is 24/7, 365.
Great. Perfect, Dudley. Perfectly also on the timing. It's 1 o'clock, and we're going to sign off here. I just want to remind everybody. Yeah, Dudley, what?
Thank you much.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Well, I have to sell something here first.
Okay.
The next webinar we have is on May 10th, and the topic is the customer experience. So when you go, not if, when you go to scorefairfieldcounty.org and click on the workshops, you'll see it and you'll be able to register. So in closing, I want to say on behalf of SCORE, thanks everyone for attending. And, of course, thank you to Budley and Michael for presenting and for answering this question so succinctly and completely. Have a nice day. It's actually supposed to get sunny finally later. So have a good day, everyone, and thanks again for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.